Bookworm. So, I thought I would do something kind of similar to what Kristen Books and Jams does, but I don't think I'm going to make it like all of the things. Like, so she does bookshelf, like, spotlights, and so this is going to be a spotlight on my nonfiction shelf. And the only reason why I'm doing this is, one, to hold myself accountable, and two, to kind of go back over what my nonfiction reading journey has been like. So, let's just get started. So, before last year, I really didn't have a goal to read nonfiction, and I had these are the ones that are still on my shelf, but I don't think I really have ever owned any other ones, but I would just show you. So, where my nonfiction journey fully started was when I was, like, in high school. I have She Said Yes by Misty Burnell, and she's the mother of one of the girls who was shot and killed in Columbine, and like her daughter was apparently asked, like, do you believe in God? And she said yes, and she was shot and killed. I read this years ago. I don't even know. Like, it's like breaking. It's that old. It was copyrighted in 1999, but I remember reading it like in high school, like early high school. And then I reread it again kind of back when I like first started my channel, I think. But like this is like the oldest book that I think I own on my shelf, like that I remember like owning physically. So this is like my foray into nonfiction. And then shortly after that, I really got into the Dave Pelzer books. So I have A Child Called It, The Lost Boy, and A Man Named Dave. And Dave Pelzer is a man who was basically abused going through from his mother, went through the foster care system and everything, and this was just kind of his journey. I remember these being difficult and hard to read, but for some reason I've just never gotten rid of them. I still own them. And then I think these were like in the very either beginning of my booktube days or like right before it. I have In the Blink of an Eye by Michael Waltrip, which I am a big NASCAR fan. I'm not as big into NASCAR as I was when I read this book. But when this came out, I like had to have it and I had to read it. So I have this one, and then I have License to Pawn by Rick Harrison because I was into Pawn Stars at the time. Weird reading journeys, right? And then back when I wasn't really like keeping track of the nonfiction I was reading, I read Brain on Fire. These are during my YouTube days. Brain on Fire, I read Wild by Cheryl Strayed. I read Scrappy Little Nobody by Anna Kendrick. My absolute, probably one of my top favorite nonfiction reads, which is What Made Maddie Run by Kate Fagan, which I'm obsessed with and kind of would like to give it a reread because I found it very important. American Fire, and Three Women. So those are probably like my more recent, like within the last like years of my channel, and I've been filming since 2012. So that's not a lot of nonfiction. So last year I really made it my goal to read more nonfiction. And I managed to read 11. So these are the 11 that I read in 2020 when I was actually physically trying to make a more conscious effort of including more nonfiction in my life. I wanted to read at least one a month, and I ended up reading 11 because August I didn't finish it, the book that I had started, and then I finished it in another month, so that month meant I didn't read one. So I got through 11, which isn't too bad, especially to go from basically reading, what was that, like 6 in the span of 8 years to reading 11. I thought that was awesome. So these are the 11 that I read. So I have read My Friend Anna, Wild Game, My Mother, Her Lover, and Me by Adrienne Broder. Then I have Open Book by Jessica Simpson. You couldn't tell, I really love memoirs. I love nonfiction that reads like fiction. Untamed by Glennon Doyle. This was also part of my Reese Witherspoon book club goal last year where I was reading all of her choices. The Ride of a Lifetime by Robert Iger, who was one of the CEOs of the Walt Disney Company. I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness by Austin Channing Brown. I wanted to read this anyways, but then also this was a Reese Witherspoon book club pick. Very short. So if you're looking into a short nonfiction, that one's definitely a good one to pick up. This one's random. Hamilton, The Revolution by Lin-Manuel Miranda and Jeremy McCarter. So this is kind of how Hamilton, the stage musical, became the stage musical. I do want to read the Hamilton that inspired Hamilton, but that's a whole nother book for another day. The Only Plane in the Sky, An Oral History of 9/11 by Garrett M. Graff. If you're looking for a nonfiction that will make you bawl your bloody eyes out, that's that one. White Guilt by Shelby Steele, How Blacks and Whites Together Destroyed the Promise of the Civil Rights Era. I will say that this came out in 2006, so it's not the most relevant. It is still relevant, 100%. That's not what I meant. I just meant like some of the information that is in here is a little bit dated, and I think that some of the views have changed since this book has been released. Still, like, it does hit points that are definitely important. A lot of it went over my head because he is just a scholar and he has a way of writing that kind of confused me. So I value the experience I had reading this, but I feel like there are other ones that I could have learned a little bit more from instead of that one. The Girls, which is an all-American town, a predatory doctor, and the untold story of the gymnast who brought him down by Abigail Presta. So this is about all the gymnasts that were basically sexually assaulted by the doctor, I'm forgetting his name, Larry Nassar, and their stories. This was really difficult to read, but an important story to read nonetheless. And then The Disney Interviews by Lou Mongello. So at this point, I have learned that I really, like I said, love memoir-y type stories and books that read like fiction, and that's kind of continued on into this year. But I will say, I think that my brain has finally taken the switch to reading nonfiction more often than I used to. So again, like I went from reading like 6 in the span of 8 years to 11 last year to we're 2 months into 2020 and I've already read 4 and I'm about, once I finish filming this video, to start my 5th. So definitely I think that it was such a great goal to put in last year to read one a month, because now I just am naturally interested and now I'm naturally doing it without having it be an official goal for me. I don't know if the goal technically kind of hurt me in the sense that I couldn't read more than 11, because in my head I was like, I just need to read that one. I just need to read that one. And now that that goal is gone, I'm more likely to pick them up, or what? I don't know. But one of the first ones that I read in the year 2021 is All Boys Aren't Blue, which is probably now by far one of my favorite books. I think I just sat down to film a whole bunch of videos, which you've already seen at this point. But I think I mentioned All Boys Are Not Blue in almost every single one of those videos. It is a very important, impactful read. So if you are looking for a nonfiction book out of this entire list, that is probably one of the ones that I will most likely recommend to you. Then the others that I read were The Last Black Unicorn by Tiffany Haddish. This is just a memoir about her life. Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. This is about the criminal justice system and inmates who are on death row and children who have been treated kind of like adults in the social, in the justice system, and it hits a whole bunch of points, but it says a story of justice and redemption. And if you think that the book is going to be intimidating and hard to read, I definitely recommend the movie, because the movie is just as good. Then I read The Beauty and Breaking by Michelle Harper, and this is a memoir about a woman who is Black, and she is a ER physician, and kind of her journey and her story of being an ER physician and finding where she fits in this type of setting and patients who have had different impacts on her along the way. And the one that I'm about to start today, once I finish this video, is The Other Madisons, which is the lost history of a president's black family by Betty Kearse. And this is about a girl who she could track her lineage, if she tracks her lineage down, which I think is the whole point of the book. She has been told that her great grandparents are a slave and James Madison, and how that has affected her family. So there's even a timeline of this is the author, and when you trace her all the way back, you will end up getting the president with a slave, which then has tracked through her family. So I'm interested to see what this is going to be like. I kind of saved it for President's Day weekend because James Madison was a president. Now, for, like I said, I have had a huge change in my bookshelf. I was saying, so when I resituated my room, this couch blocks my nonfiction. And I was like, well, I never go into that corner anyway, so it doesn't matter. Now my nonfiction shelves are exploding because I just have this newfound love for nonfiction. I have a bunch that I'm going to share with you right now that I'm hoping to get to within this year. And even on if you go on my Amazon wish list, my Amazon wish list now has a ton of nonfiction as well. So it's definitely a genre that I have begun to explore more and more. So these are all the ones that I have unread. Some of these you've seen before. You probably have seen them from when I made my goal last year, and I still haven't gotten to them yet, but I just want to share my updated nonfiction shelf. So I've got The Bling Ring by Nancy Jo Sales. This is about the teens that basically went and stole from celebrities. I cannot believe this is still on my shelf unread. Goals. This is definitely getting read this year, or I have to unhaul it, I swear. I've got Educated by Tara Westover. I feel like everybody has absolutely loved this book or have been able to take something out of this book. So I really want to give it a try, especially as an educator. I feel like I definitely need to read this one. Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. I have started it technically. I got 34 pages in, and then I was just trying it, so I didn't actually start it with the attempt of continuing it. I just wanted to see what the writing style was like. This is on my top 10 backlist books that I need to read in 2021, so it will be getting read this year. And then I've got Inheritance by Dani Shapiro, and this is about a girl, well, not girl, about a woman who did a DNA test and found out that her father was not her father. And that just sounds terrifying. So I'm excited to see what this one will be like. I believe this is nonfiction. I don't understand this author. I've tried to figure it out, but I really don't. So this is The Devil in the White City, Murder, Magic, and Madness at the Fair That Changed America. But it says that it's about 1893 during two men, the brilliant architect behind the legendary 1893 World's Fair, and then the cunning serial killer who used the fair to lure his victims to their death. But then it says research, including storytelling, and it talks about the best thrills of it's narrative with the wonder of newly discovered history and the thrills of best fiction. So I'm is it fiction? Is it nonfiction? I don't know. So if you can, tell me, that would be great. Because I've been keeping it on my nonfiction shelf. But I'm is it fiction? Is it nonfiction? I don't know. Know My Name by Chanel Miller. I'm embarrassed that this is still on my shelf. I bought this last spring and I still haven't gotten to it. It's about a woman who was raped in college, and basically the man who raped her basically got away with basically a slap on the hand. And I've heard that this is phenomenal and I really want to read it, and I can't believe I haven't read it yet. So hopefully that will happen this year. White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism by Robin DiAngelo. I have heard this one isn't the best, but I bought it before I knew that. This is actually written by a white woman, and I think White Rage is written by a black author, so I really probably should have picked up White Rage and not this one. And I heard that this one, the author does use the N-word in it, which is cringy because white people shouldn't be using the N-word. So I'm interested to see what it's like, but I'm also going into it very cautiously. Let me know your thoughts if you've read this one. I've got Everything Beautiful is in Its Time by Jenna Bush Hager. I really like the Bushes, and I'm really excited for this one. Jenna wrote this one about her grandparents on both sides of her family, and the life lessons that she's learned from both sides of her family. And I think it's going to be a really sweet, wholesome read, so I'm excited for that one. I've got Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall. April from Getting Hoogie With It has really raved about this one, and other people have also raved about it as well, but she's where I really saw it first, and I immediately put it on my wish list and my TBR, and I'm excited to hopefully get to this one. My goal, because February is just flying, I don't think I'm going to get to it this month, but I'm hoping probably like March or April. Same thing with Stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism, and You, by Jason Reynolds and Ibram X. Kendi. I tried to read the adult version, Stamped, from the beginning last year. I tried to listen to it on audio, but it was very dense and not a book I want to read on audio. And the physical book is also huge, so I feel like I would like to start with this version to build myself up to the adult version, because they're both important reads. And I don't know if it's like, if you read this one, you don't need to, not that you don't need to read the next one, but like, is it too much repetitiveness? Are they the same? Are they different? Are they, like, I don't know how they're written, so I don't know how closely related they are or not. So if you've read both, let me know. This one has been on my, I think the last three are ones from that video that I was talking about earlier. And this is What I Wish My Teacher Knew, How One Question Can Change Everything for Our Kids by Kyle Schwartz. I do this in my classroom already. In the beginning of the year, I always ask them, like, what's something that you wish I knew? And you either get, especially with third graders, you either get something that like is actually really impactful, or you get something like, I wish my teacher knew my favorite color was pink, and it's not actually very helpful at all. But there are sometimes those students that you really need to reach. You can be surprised by what they will write on a piece of paper and hand to you, especially when you tell them that it's anonymous and nobody else will know that they wrote that. So I'm excited to see what the nonfiction book tells me about it. Even though I already do this practice in my room, I'm excited to give it a try. We've got The Great Pretender by Susanna Callahan, and it's in 1973, a charismatic doctor convinced 8 healthy people to commit themselves to mental hospitals, and then they had to prove their sanity in order to be set free. Then apparently their undercover mission would change our understanding of madness forever. I've heard that this one isn't as good as Brain on Fire, which I showed you earlier, but I'm still really intrigued to see what this one is like, because I was a psychology major, so I find it very interesting anyways, so hopefully that'll happen this year. And then the last one is American Predator, The Hunt for the Most Meticulous Serial Killer of the 21st Century by Maureen Callahan. And I've heard that this one is really dark and really gritty and really difficult to read, but I'm still here for it, and I want to see what it's about and what it's like. I love how most of these are actually under 300 pages, so I should definitely be able to get to most of these this year. Let's see. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 that I haven't read, and I read 11 last year, and I've already read 4 this year, which tells me that there's a good chance I could probably get through this stack unless I buy more, and then some of these will get pushed to the side. But I have a high prognosis that I think I should be able to get through at least a majority of those. If you've read any of these, let me know down below. Let me know your thoughts of any of them that I have read, or even ones that I haven't read. If you think there's any that I really need to prioritize, let me know down below. And I will see you guys really soon. Bye, everybody.